This is a groove recording, man. I can dig it.
Right on.
Hey, man, what's your name? Everything is everything. Let me get down today. Come on, tell me. Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Calvin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Earl. How are you?
I'm doing fine, man. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, I took a one-day little R&R, and I've returned.
Well, aren't you going to talk about the warm weather?
Well, it is. It was a pretty nice weekend, and it
No, I mean
seems to be
today,
sticking
isn't it?
around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is it yesterday? Well, by now you know who that voice is. That's the one and only Sandy Williams, my co-host. Good morning to you, Sandy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And, you guys normally talk about how cold the weather is or how wet today. It's going to be like spring-like almost in the
Well,
40s.
yesterday it didn't really get to be. The wind was very much noticeable, and it was a cold wind.
Yes, someone named Dorothy came and knocked on my door.
And so even though it may have been 36 degrees with that wind, I didn't feel. Calvin, did you feel warmth were you out yesterday?
To be honest with you, I hung out in the house most of the day, so I didn't really sense the weather. When I let the dogs out, it didn't seem terrible.
Oh, well, it was cold, man. I felt the cold. I was out. Hey, look, it's still January, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's supposed to be cold, right?
It is supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be winter. It's supposed to make us hardy. It's supposed to get our brain cells working rapidly so we can be like all the Northern Europeans who came up with all the modern inventions. During
Sandy,
the winter, probably.
Sandy,
Nothing better to do.
all of the people who talk against climate change, it can't be coincidental that last year was the warmest year on record.
Well, and the year before that was the warmest on record. I mean, every year has been the warmest on record for some long period of time now. So,
and Sandy, the least snow in January, that's what we're facing right now. Three inches of snow we've had in all of January.
yeah.
There's something going on. I don't, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but there's something happening.
There definitely is something happening in the weather and elsewise. We're in a very happening time.
Yeah, I can tell you why we're in such a happening time. Dr. Phil follows ICE officers in Chicago. It's just real. Hey, Calvin, can you play that music Sandy hasn't heard? But we're entering into this aura, Sandy. Calvin, if you find it, he'll find it.
Okay, is this going to be music I recognize from a bygone era? I think it is. Yeah, there we go. Rod Serling.
Yeah, man. We are officially in the Twilight
Zone. Yeah.
Dr. Phil following ICE officers in Chicago, man. His name is being tossed around as somebody, who can wind up in a cabinet position. If that's not the Twilight Zone, man, where are we?
All you have to be is a notorious TV commentator, and you can get yourself into a position of, you can get yourself on the King's Court very quickly.
Man, it is happening. There's so many things happening, and today you and I are going to talk about many different things Sandy, and our phone lines open as always at 855-752-4842. You're officially entering into the twilight zone because, Sandy, we Project 2025. You took a deep dive into it last year. I think you took a whole week, didn't you? Or
Yeah,
2 weeks?
No,
You
yeah.
took
Well,
a
it was
whole week.
900 plus pages. I suffered through all of them, and it was startling to read, but it's now unfolding in every way. I mean, there was the president, while he was running for office, announced that he knew nothing about it, had nothing to do with it, which, of course, at the time was clearly not the case, and now it is clearly not the case, because almost every step that has been taken, every executive order, is reflective of what it was that was in Project 2025 as the recommendations for the first days in office. uh, Impounding expenditures, firing officers in the Justice Department, taking control of the Justice Department, firing the FBI director and having an FBI director who serves at your pleasure. All of these things were right there, front and center, and some of the most concerning things that were in Project 2025, and now they're happening.
Well, Sandy, and the frightening thing is, this is week number two.
Yeah,
I mean,
time flies when you're having fun.
Sandy, it's when you really sit back and try to, and you've been around a while, and you've seen changes in government, and you've seen changes in presidents, and what we haven't seen are major changes that take place to the degree of what we're talking about now. Massive changes.
Well, I think most presidents try to plant both feet on the ground very quickly when they become president. So I think that every president has issued some executive orders earlier in their presidency. They've tried to assert their control over the government apparatuses in some ways, but this is sort of unprecedented. The level of the executive orders, they were all ready to be signed. Numbers of them, particularly the one that was signed last night, terminating or at least freezing all assistance payments and grants, came kind of out of left field. It came out of Project 2025 in all likelihood, but numbers of these things are the kinds of things that will and should probably be tested in court as to being beyond the power of the presidency.
So,
We'll talk about it after the break, but this order that came out last night about assistance and grants is clearly an effort by the president to begin the process of impounding expenditures that have been authorized by Congress. And there was the Impoundment Control Act passed by Congress in 1974 that was intended to deal directly with this. President Nixon had gone to some lengths to impound different expenditures, and every time he did so, the content that there was a test of it that went to the Supreme Court. He lost every court case because all of the courts have always said the president has no power of impoundment. And the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 was designed to set up a process that included Congress that might give the president a mechanism for attempting to impound things. And the impoundments that are allowed under the Impoundment Control Act can last no longer than 45 days. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see whether the president tries to follow the Impoundment Control Act, and we'll see exactly how it plays out. But he's definitely going to be testing the extent of the president's power with respect to expenditures, and we can expect the Supreme Court to be front and center.
yeah, but he controls the Supreme Court. So, Sandy, I've been around long enough to have seen, the change in power over and over and over and over and over again with both Democrats and Republicans, but never anything ever approaching what we're talking about. Do you think that he's in a position to do these things because he had 4 years, then he had 4 years off where he could sit back and see the things that happened during his first 4 years and then watch what happened after his 4 years and then plan and plot?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I mean, he's had 4 years off. Project 2025 was drafted by a bunch of conservative think tanks over a period of many months. And so there's been a lot of planning that's gone into the potential for this election of a conservative president, and in particular, Donald Trump, a president who's been there before. And, he's going to make lots of mistakes, but they won't be the mistakes he made last time around. These mistakes are going to be the exercise of the excess of power, and also the mistakes that can be made when no one is there to speak truth to power and to try and persuade the president that maybe some of his instincts need to be reconsidered. And so, I think that's the area of mistake now. It's going to be overreach.
so if we look beyond, if we could look into a crystal ball and look beyond the next 4 years, and we could snap our finger and the 4 years are over, our government and the American people are going to have learned so much from these 4 years of how we need to protect our government and democracy from this ever happening again. Is it safe to say that?
Well, that would be the notion that the pendulum is swung way out and the pendulum will start swinging back as the result of the public's realization of how far out we have gotten. I do think that's the most likely outcome, but there are other outcomes possible, particularly if this president is able to install a bunch of changes in the balance of power that cause a new president to be able to exercise a great deal more power.
All right, 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. And we're going to talk about what is a meritocracy system. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
What?
When Roosevelt came to the land of the hummingbird, shouts of welcome were heard. When Roosevelt came to the land of the hummingbird, shouts of welcome were heard. His visit to their island is bound to be an epoch in local history, definitely marking a new era, keeping Trinidad in America.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. And Sandy, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to give people an opportunity to kind of guess, where you're coming from with your music.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to try it out.
Okay.
We're going to have to, clearly, we're going to have to wait to after the first several songs before they can kind of try to figure it out.
Yeah, that one was Ry Cooter singing a song about Trinidad.
All right. So, if you got an idea of where you think Sandy's going with the music, we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. So, Sandy, what is a meritocracy system? Let me just read this paragraph. Meritocracy is an ideology wherein those who work hard are rewarded for their ability and effort. From a sociological perspective, the meritocratic system believes that successful people are fully deserving of such. A meritocratic system is one where jobs and pay are allocated to individuals based on their talent and achievement rather than their ascriptive factors like social, class, gender, ethnicity, or wealth. In contrast, those who do not work hard are seen as underachieving and will not be rewarded. The idea of meritocracy was first coined by British sociologist Michael Young in 1958 and has received much attention since. So, Sandy, I would ask you, I've been hearing, we're in a meritocratic system now from on conservative outlets. And prior to Trump getting in office, I hadn't heard that. And maybe people have been pushing for this for a long time. But I think it's important that people understand what the definition of it is. And then you find yourself in that system. Where do you fit in this system? Because this belief that working hard is somehow you're going to get rewarded for working hard in this system is just not true.
Well, I think what's interesting about the definition is it uses the term regardless of ethnicity, okay? And I think the people who are today touting this change, this supposed change towards a meritocracy, are doing it because they were upset about the notion that ethnicity might come into play in the evaluation of people on the job, for instance. And let me just say that the first of all, DEI is not by definition an affirmative action program. The DEI that has been the subject of all this attention recently is an education program, and it's an education program that was carried out both privately and then after it became the norm, a norm privately, it became a part of government operations as well. But I come from an era when people thought we lived in a meritocracy, and in fact we didn't. Okay, so that I can give you firsthand information. I graduated from a law school in New York City in 1970. Was on the law review of the New York Law School, and on the law review with me were probably 40% of us were probably Jewish. At that time in New York, the most highly regarded law firms in New York City refused to hire Jewish people, okay? So they had a meritocracy? I think not. they would have asserted that they lived in a world of meritocracy, but they actually discriminated in a negative fashion. And there was a long period of time in our history, and it remains today, where race has been used undoubtedly invidiously in a way to defeat what might otherwise be a meritocracy, to exclude some people even from consideration. So I think the notion that DEI was designed to create preferences for race, I think, is just plain incorrect. I think DEI was being installed so that a meritocracy would operate and would make sure that included in the consideration of those with merit would be an equal consideration of people regardless of ethnicity. To basically, DEI is designed, I think, to uncover within us our hidden biases and the things that might hide from ourselves the way in which we would bias our evaluation of merit.
So, Sandy, when you look at federal contracts that have been in place and had these stipulations uh, predicated on what had happened in the past, this new movement eliminates those standards that have been put in place on federal contracts and others to be inclusive when these contracts go into place. And so,
Well, Well, I think much of the attack, for instance, on DEI and the military has been that one notion, it's a waste of time. Why are we going through this process of educating people about bias and trying to overcome it? Number one. Number two, there's an argument much like the critical race theory arguments, which, argued really about the teaching of history, not critical race theory, which was that they were teaching shame because we were trying to identify in people things that might, I guess, be shameful if we have them. DEI was designed, I think, to identify in people the bias that was hidden from themselves, not to create a shame, but just to make people aware of the fact that maybe we all do a form of profiling that might be invidious with respect to measuring merit.
well, again, though, Sandy, meritocracy, which is what they're touting now. This is what we want. This is what the nation should be. And this is what we're going by now. And so that's the standard that I'm hearing being preached from the Republicans right now, the Republican Party. And this is the new America. It doesn't discriminate against anybody. And so, now everything is equal. And that's the way we're going to see it. 855-752-4842 is the number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my co-host, Sandy Williams, and your thoughts on what, meritocracy. Because that seems to be the order of the day on the Earl Ingram Show.
This is no. Actually, the song intended here is Abilene by Peter Mulvey. It's a different song. This one isn't going to meet the trend here.
Okay, we'll have him look into it. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. And so we're going to do something a little different. We're going to have you guess, what Sandy's thoughts are for his music today. So, but before we went to break, we were talking about what meritocracy is, which seems to be something that's being touted now by the Republican Party, and this seems to be the direction that this nation is headed in. A meritocratic society is one where jobs and pay are allocated to individuals based on their talent and achievement rather than their ascriptive factors like social class, gender, ethnicity, or wealth. In contrast, those who do not work hard are seen as undeserving and will not be rewarded. The idea of meritocracy was first coined by British sociologist Michael Young in 1958 and has received much attention since. Young reflected that meritocracy would result in dystopia and that social status being dependent on the natural abilities and hard work would establish further inequities. However, many societies have increasingly recognized meritocracy as a positive system. So I would say, Sandy, last paragraph. The allocation of rewards is justified. Reward allocation is justified by meritocratic ideology in the whoever performs best deserves the highest reward. It provides a moral basis of allocating rewards such as money, status, and social and societal success. Meritocracy corresponds to the functionalist idea that ascription should be replaced by achievement. This contrasts with rewards given through nepotism and bribery, among other methods. This means that for society to perform most efficiently, differences in achievement should lead to different rewards. Sandy, that's some pretty descriptive information about where we're headed. And I don't believe, I honestly don't believe that this is leading us towards giving equal opportunities to people in this country.
Well, I think the semantics of the meaning of it sort of beg the question. Okay, so everyone believes that how well you perform on the job and what your capabilities are ought to be measured in some objective fashion, so that when people are considered for jobs or when people are considered for promotions, it's based on merit. Okay, it's based on how well they do and how well they're likely to do based on some objective criteria. All of that's hard to argue with. The point is that, does the system that's in place do an adequate job of doing that, particularly if we have embedded in us hidden biases? Are we more afraid of when we walk down the street? Do we find ourselves recoiling with some fear when we see three young African American boys walking together coming in our direction? Many people will realize that yes, they have a reaction to that isn't based on fact, that isn't based on a real risk. It's based on some form of profiling that they do. And we all have biases, and it's something we all have to recognize. And only when you recognize your biases can you overcome them for the purpose of actually measuring merit. So that's what DEI was all about. And eliminating DEI, I think, only promises to move us back in the direction away from the capacity to really actually accurately measure merit.
So, Sandy, this meritocracy, is predicated on the person who sits in the seat of power and who they are and what their beliefs are. Because
Exactly.
you're leaving it up to the individual now.
Well, it
And
always look. It's all up to the individual. All the efforts to try and improve this process have been aimed at the individuals who might be in decision-making positions to help them make better decisions. That's what DEI was about. That's why DEI was taught at the academies. That's why DEI was being taught to generals and leaders in the military. It's why we have the process, because it's aimed at helping us make better decisions that might be more, from an analytical standpoint, better based on actual merit and not based on hidden bias.
so James says equality primarily means in the Declaration of Independence the implication that they are equal under the law, thereby people would have equal opportunity to pursue a way of life that would please them uh, as long as they had social responsibility about the way they do it. There was no thought of a special protected class.
Well, there's no, we're not talking about protected. I mean, I think that affirmative action has been eliminated, okay? And so now do we have protected classes? I'm not sure. I think what we have is an effort to educate people so that they can understand how to measure merit in a truly objective fashion without the burden of potential biases that we might have.
Sandy.
The DEI is not about preferences, I don't believe, and I don't think that, so that they've been conflated, so that the notion that transgender people have achieved some kind of favored status through DEI isn't the case. I don't think the DEI programs involve any sort of protected classes, I think what it involves is an analysis of ourselves to determine whether we have within us biases that might be masked to us, but which might impede our ability to well reflect merit in the decisions we make.
Sandy, I've heard this constantly. Phone lines open at 855-752-4842. I heard this constantly over the last several years. The military can't hire, it can't get more recruits because white males feel like they're going to be discriminated against because of DEI and other things. And so qualified white males are not going into the military. We've got to fix that. And this is the verbiage that was tossed around over the last couple of years prior to this move now to go into the military and basically clear it out. So qualified white males can feel as though they're going to be able to be promoted more so than supposedly people of color and transgender people who somehow are getting, a better kick at the cat.
Well, I don't know if they're getting a better kick at the cat. They might be getting a kick at the cat that wasn't previously there. I have not seen any analysis that was empirically based that demonstrates that decisions have been made less based on merit in the recent period than they have been in the past. I think that there probably is an effort to have a leadership cadre that looks something like the people that are being led, and that might be an important criteria for leadership in an organization. So, that might be all part of merit, quite frankly.
855-752-4842. Let's go to CJ. Good morning to you, CJ. You say what?
Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. Meritocracy. Listen to Pete Hegseth, watched it on C-SPAN. He spoke of that the military was the most segregated, merit-based institution in our government, and that's the way it should be. DEI is dead in the military, thank God, because that's not what it's been there for.
Well, I actually, I think we probably would need to talk about what DEI is so we could talk about whether it needs to be dead or not. But let me ask you a question, CJ. Do you find yourself when you're walking in the city of Milwaukee, do you have a reaction that you might admit to if you are approached by a group of 5 young African American boys, high school age, dressed in the fashion that they might be dressed in? Does that does that affect you?
What does that have to do with it?
That this is what DEI is about, because no. What I'm trying to do is to go through a process here of trying to you and we all do profiling. Jesse Jackson admitted to doing profiling with respect to young black men. We profile because we have experiences, or we don't have experiences, but we have fears and we have biases that are built into us. Like I said, I graduated from law school at a time when the very smartest people in my class, a majority of them, were Jewish, but none of them were getting hired into the very best law firms in New York City. All of those law firms would have claimed that they operated on a complete meritocracy, and yet they didn't. And so, I'm simply asking you whether you believe you might have within you any biases that could affect your judgment.
Well, would you walk down that street at 10 o'clock at
There you go. I mean, CJ, you're deflecting. What we have to do is self-evaluate and decide whether, in fact, we might have biases. And if we have those biases, we at least have to take them into account when we're making decisions that we think ought to be based on merit or on the best interests of the organization in which we are located.
So
And
CJ,
so I'm simply telling you that your view of DEI, which is probably based on zero experience with it, might not be correct with respect to some of the conceptual underpinnings of why DEI was implemented.
and Sandy, that's the best explanation. What you just said is really what this is about, right?
Well, I mean, that's how DEI was conceived. I don't know how it's implemented at all places, but I believe that that you, CJ, being a self-employed person, at least that's my perception of your situation, have had zero experience with what DEI means. It's not affirmative action.
Well, I want to judge people by their content of character.
Oh, come on, man. That's a cliche.
Well, no, but that's exactly what I'm getting at, CJ. If you have a bias within you that might affect your judgment, then you at least ought to understand that bias so that you can take it into account, don't you think?
Yeah, but Sandy, he said he wants to judge people by the content of their character. He just responded before that if he saw those black young men walking down the street, he wasn't going to judge them by their character because he's already got a preconceived idea. He asked you if you would do it.
Right.
So don't tell me about you want to judge them by the content of their character, CJ. That's, again.
No, simply the fact. The content of character seems to be, I don't care about the color of their skin. Because
no, I think,
CJ,
I just think we need to understand whether we care about that or not, because I think we all do.
That does.
Yeah.
855-752-4842 is the number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And, to be quite frank with you, I think, Sandy, the conversations that you and I talk about, these issues, very few people will broach them. And I think that's why, this is so good. 855-752-4842. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
and have blues. You're thinking about me and you, and what on earth are we gonna do? My money's gone, my fun is gone. Where things stuck, I can't be here long. Oh.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host, Sandy Williams. And we're going to ask you a little bit later on in the show to kind of guess, where Sandy's coming from with his music. We got several more songs, so we'll give you a little bit more of it. And then if we can't get anybody to guess, Sandy, you'll let us know exactly, why you are playing what you're playing today. But we've been talking about meritocracy and where, the nation, and I'm listening to conservatives and Donald Trump and others, and we want this to be a merit-based system, and we're questioning whether or not it is that. Phone lines are jammed, so let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Richard from Waukesha. Richard, thank you very much for the call. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. You say what?
Well, I got a question or some news for Sandy. It's kind of political and race and music. Did you ever listen to Harpo Marx? He plays pretty good, and he gave some lessons to Harry Truman on the piano in the White House. He's got quite a political past, but he can't sing. He's kind of like Bob Dylan.
Yeah, we know who Harpo Marx is. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Can you name all the Marx brothers?
Not at the moment right here, but
Chico, Groucho, Harpo. Yeah.
Yeah, there's three of them, right?
Yeah. And Harpo never talked. He just ran around with a horn and playing instruments.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Richard, your thoughts on the conversation?
He couldn't talk because they politically left Europe, and he kept getting himself in trouble when he talked. He performed in Russia, all over Russia and Germany, and they had to flee Europe because, as Groucho Marx would say, I'm German and...
Hey, so Richard, any thoughts on our conversation?
Well, everybody has some built-in thoughts from their upbringing, so when you expect somebody to be a certain way and they're not, it shakes you up a little,
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about the hidden sort of the bias we have that's within each of us that might keep us from making judgments about others that are absolutely accurate. Yeah.
Hey, Richard, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Brendan from New Jersey. Good morning to you, Brendan. You say what?
I'd say that more of CJ's ignorance and just
Well, let's
stupidity.
not waste any time on CJ, man, because let's just your thoughts on meritocracy.
Well, it's just let's call this what it is. Okay, it's not meritocracy. It's not like Trump had a staff of people go and look at people's files and see what their workability was. They have a problem with gay, transgender people. It's a racial and it is a sexual-based hatred that they have for these people. So they're not looking at anybody's ability. And as far as what he mentioned about the military, oh, thank God, the military. What does anybody care, including CJ, who's out there grabbing a rifle and protecting him and his rights and his freedoms? It's just all a waste of time, and it's just all racial and sexual orientation hatred. So you can call it meritocracy. You can call it whatever you want. But that's not what it is, and that's not what's going on.
Hey, Brendan, I don't disagree with anything you said, man. You're a stand-up guy for calling it, just the way it is, man. Thank you very much for the call. Ann from Chippewa Falls. Good morning to you, Ann. You say what?
Yeah, I think we all have some preconceived ideas. And especially if you grow up in certain areas, like literally, if I saw three white dudes at 10 o'clock at night, I might veer off to a different block. And the same way with three black guys, just because I'm a woman, I start to feel some urges to, not be in that situation.
Understandable.
So, and I know you don't want us to bring up anything about CJ, but I just have to make this point. CJ is hiring on character, really? Then why did he vote for Trump? Also, now the right is saying it's good to have higher prices because when you pay these prices, you're being more patriotic. Has the right totally lost their minds? What a bunch of BS. Thank you.
Hey, Ann, thank you very much for the call. Um, Sandy, I'm a guy who, depending on where it is in the city of Milwaukee and what time of the evening it is, there's a good chance I may walk on the other side of the street if there are some black guys, who
Yeah.
are coming. And so, I, when we get into this kind of conversation and this kind of, uh, thing about meritocracy and all, it brings these kind of things to the surface, Sandy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that what really, if we want to make the best objective decision about what's best for the organization in which we operate, we need to understand how and why we make our own personal decisions so we can take that into account.
855-752-4842. We'll be right back.
Hi.
It's Taylor. There's like 3 bills saying overdue. Taylor, I don't know what it is. I've never seen them before.
It's not from us. Not for us.
It's what
I bet it's Bill William. The address not to us.
it says 8550.
Well, no, McDonald's.
It says McDonald's.
I know, it's Robert Piles.
Oh, okay. So, okay then. Then I'll put it in his mail. Oh, I think it's locked. Why do they have our address?
Well, it's 8550 or 8500.
Yeah.
What do you see? Oh, that carrot over there, the one address.
Yeah. Oh. So that was a failure. I walked her 4 times and she was very excited, but she did not poop. And there were even poops to smell.
And what?
There were even poops to smell. Is it not 8 o'clock yet? I've lost all track of time, but you're not on the radio.
It's 9 o'clock. I've been on for an hour
Oh,
and I just got a break right now.
oh, there you go. Yeah, because I can't hear her out there, so I didn't even try. Oh.
Are you hurting now? You look like you're hurting.
I my back and butt, you know, where I fell. That's the problem.
Okay, well, I need to close the doors.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've been on the phone. I've been on this for an hour.
I just lost all track of time.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
I thought I knew that voice a couple times, but we'll get into it. 855-752-4842. Sandy can't hear. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you. Sandy, can you hear now?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to get into uh, the music and why Sandy has played the music he has in a few minutes. But we've been talking about meritocracy and what it is. And so we've got some callers still on the line. I think it's a worthy conversation. I think the conversation runs deeper than the surface of the definition of what meritocracy is. Let's go to Cassandra from Madison. Good morning to you, Cassandra. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Hi, Earl and Sandy. Thanks for taking my call. Whenever we talk about meritocracy and organizations, what I have learned is that there is a shifting definition of who is considered worthy of appointment, advancement, etc. And there's not always a clear definition of who is
Worthy.
who has merit
Yes, right.
and who is worthy. Yeah, and I'm a military veteran, and occasionally I follow the news in many of the military times, and I don't know if you all are aware of this, but the U.S. Navy has released in the last year, 18 months, 12 commanders and one commandant of the Coast Guard.
Yeah, female. The first female.
The first female.
Right.
Yes. And most of the individuals who were released from their command, many of them, not all, many of them were women or people of color. And the reason for removing them from command was because they did not inspire leadership in the ranks. And so my question is, how does Pete Hegseth, someone who is a major, a junior, well, a mid-rank officer, someone who has never managed any organization the size of the Pentagon, how is he qualified? How was that appointment based upon merit? And so these ideas. So when I listen to conservatives, and I do lean conservative in some ways, but I am willing to step back and say this is not. Your ideology and your application do not line up.
Bingo. Yeah. I mean, bingo, Cassandra. So Pete Hegseth, Sandy, you want to take a kick at that can?
Well, merit, like I said, one person's merit is another person's hypocrisy or bigotry. Certainly merit wasn't the basis on which Pete Hegseth was selected, right? I mean, as to who would be the very best person to run the Department of Defense, I'm confident that if there were a competition measured by people with objective thought, Pete Hegseth wouldn't have been even in the mix.
Hey, he might have not even made the top 100 when we're talking about, or 1,000 when we're.
I don't think he makes the list.
I know. It's just true. Yet he's in a position now to mete that out, Sandy.
Right.
That's the problem with all this. Let's go to Linda from McClare. Good morning to you, Linda. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for calling. You say what? Linda, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I am. Earl, I've come across this word here. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but as far as merit, there's a word here. Maybe Sandy will correct me if I've got it wrong. Kakistocracy. When a government, by the least
suitable or competent citizens of a state. And that's what's happening now. We have the most incompetent people who are running the country. As a definition of a technocracy, in addition to all the other descriptors of it.
So, Linda, hang on, Sandy. You have you heard of that word?
Well, I haven't happily because it hasn't happened probably that often. But yeah, I mean, I think that the American public is the judge of the merit of the incoming administration and every incoming administration, and hopefully we'll do a good job of measuring the merit of what it is that we're currently being presented with, which, in my mind, has a lot to prove. I'm definitely from Missouri as to whether or not this incoming administration reflects any sort of merit.
Hey, Linda, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Dave from Mequon. Good morning to you, Dave. You say what?
Good morning. I guess we have a very different ideology when it comes to this. And, I have looked at his background, Pete Hexrith, and, the guy went to 2 elite schools. He went to Harvard, he went to Princeton, he served in the Army, went to battle. He's familiar with a lot of the nuances of the military. And, maybe you guys are saying he's not in the top 100, but I disagree. I think he is a
well, David, you left off this resume. You left off his temporary or short-term leadership of the Veterans Organization from which he was suspended from his job, or at least they've had a mutual parting of the ways based on experience that included some financial problems as well as potentially alcohol-related issues. I mean, you've that's a partial resume. There's some blanks in there.
All right. So didn't didn't he have issues when he was younger?
But see, Dave, that's not the answer.
President?
That's not the answer. Didn't George Bush? We're talking about Pete Hegseth, and we're talking about a man running the biggest, entity in our government.
Well, we had, and also George Bush was elected governor of Texas, and there was a process of observation of George Bush and his capacity to perform for a period of years by voters and in a public way, which hasn't been the case in this other circumstance. But I'm just saying you're providing a partial resume, that's all.
All right. Well, at the end of the day, I do think, though, we do have to go back to a merit system, because if we lower the standards like the state of Wisconsin did, you're doing a huge disservice for the people that would probably not be qualified.
So where did the state of Wisconsin lower the standards? What do you mean?
Well, didn't you see that Governor Evers just had a disagreement with the I forgot her
Oh,
name.
well, yes, the Department of Education, the bureau, the head of wanted to change the testing standards. They didn't. That was different. They weren't changing the standards with respect to the measurement of people. They were going to change the way in which the tests were recorded and measured. But I'm not sure that DEI necessarily correctly implemented involves a changing of standards. And do you understand that to be the case?
Well, again, that's why the whole Asia community sued the top schools.
No, that wasn't. No, that was not that was not DEI per se. That was the acceptance program, and that was affirmative action.
Hey, David, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Tom from LA. Good morning to you, Tom. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Earl, my brain's about ready to explode. First off, Cassandra and people like Cassandra, this is what you voted for. Just want to remind you of that. Second, again, I'm not picking her out particularly. I'm saying people like her. Also, racism is interwoven into the fabric of our society. Like I've talked about before, even in Hollywood, in the media, usually portray black people as criminals, as thugs, as gangbangers, as drug dealers. So that's what people in small town Wisconsin all of a sudden think that's their experience with black people. And people need to wake up. What this country seems to want to move to is not a meritocracy. What it wants to move to is a straight commission job. And I'll tell you what, even in a very diverse place like Los Angeles, if you are a salesperson, now I am very, very lucky. I am a white guy. I can walk up to someone's door at 7 o'clock at night, and people are not going to fear me as much as they will some black guy that's, selling internet and cable door to door. This is what DEI was basically to put a rule in place. First off, I don't even think it was done in the government so much as it was done in private corporations because they saw the number of their customers that identified with different people.
Hey, Tom, hang on a second. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams, and you guys hang on the phone lines. It's Tuesday. That means Sandy Williams, my co-host, is holding down the fort. We'll be right back.
Funky, down, nasty.
Hey, listen to the man.
Rap Godfather,
Payback.
cold-blooded. People, gotta get over before we go under. Down, Lord. People, we gotta get over before we go under.
Well, Sandy, I thought maybe people might have had a chance to figure out the music, but now James Brown. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. And Sandy, nobody knows the music. Why?
Well, all of it involves the president. That's the funky president. If you'd
Yep.
listen, there weren't enough words there. The prior song was the president singing "Amazing Grace." That was Barack Obama.
Yeah, I knew it. That voice.
And the first song was about FDR. The next couple of songs were about Dwight Eisenhower. So these are all songs that relate to presidents.
All right, Tom, L.A., go ahead. Finish up your thought.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is the Republicans' idea is for it to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant straight man. Now, I will tell you, I'm pretty fortunate because of the fact that I can pass as a straight man. But the thing is, the problem is that if you have a majority of white people, the good old boys club, if you have that, and everybody is basically an independent owner of a business, or they work straight commission, which is what the Republicans would like. They'd like us to have no salary at all. Then basically, the people that are going to win in that equation will always be the white Anglo-Saxon straight, Protestant man, because there's more of them in the country than there is anybody else. So I just hope people kind of can check their white privilege at the door. The whole idea of DEI was to actually just make people aware of the fact that there is diversity in a workforce, and don't let the majority of straight white men think that they are the only ones in a workforce. And the same thing goes with even white women that give up their power up to white men. This is the problem. So people like CJ and Gary can call in because they don't have to worry about any type of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because my guess is most of their customers are probably white, and that's where they get their business from. So, I mean, I'm in the same position. I own my own business. I work as an independent contractor. I don't work for a company. But the thing is, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I have the ability to be able to do it because I am a white dude.
Say, Tom, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Mark from DeSac, Prairie DeSac. Good morning to you, Mark. Thank you very much. Thanks for hanging on. You say what?
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. That diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's think about that. Diversity. We have a diverse society, and it's getting more diverse by the day. Equity is everybody should be treated equal. Inclusion, including everybody to be able to prove their abilities, to prove their their merits, and this supposed meritocracy that they're looking for. And to I think Dave from Mequon was talking about Pete Hegseth. Well, the man, talking about his military career. If the man committed adultery during his military career, and they were aware of that, it's, to my knowledge, the military still hasn't removed that prohibition on that, and that's a court-martial offense to commit adultery. So his military career, we could say, well, if you're looking at it objectively, then his military career should be set aside. But he committed a court-martial offense while in the military. I'm not judging based on that, and let's just, you can't lay that aside. And the man has not run an organization of the size, any size at all, that makes him qualified to run an organization as big as the Pentagon. I mean, and they're purging people with merit out of positions all over the place. I mean, I just checked today on the whole firing inspectors general. Part of it being an inspectors general, I assume, is part of it is in conformity with the code of ethics in terms of for the internal auditors. I know a little bit about that because I was an accountant in my career, and part of that was integrity, objectivity, and competency. I don't know if confidentiality actually applies in the terms for the Inspector General, but I don't know. You have to objectively decide if these people actually can be objective on these matters, if they have an integrity, or if they have the competency to run an organization of that size. And I do not think that Pete Hegseth does have that competency. I mean, speaking as as a layperson that has never run an organization of that size. I mean, that I worked as an accountant for the state of Wisconsin, but I had to apply my training, to be, my integrity and my competency to do my job.
You know what, Mark? The worst thing about it is he's there. Okay, they gave it to him.
Well, I do think that we should all be awake and that we should all do a self-education about this DEI thing because it's getting a bad rap and it's getting it's become a pejorative term without people even understanding what it is or what it might try to accomplish. And what it tries to accomplish is all very meritorious. And I don't believe that in its form it involves affirmative action. I think affirmative action went the way of the Supreme Court decisions in the very cases that Dave was talking about with respect to admissions to schools. And so, I think as a society, we just need to be alert to this and awake to what it is, the underlying motives that might be there for throwing out the baby with the bathwater in terms of expunging DEI and painting it as a pejorative.
Well, they've already done away with it. So let's go to Cindy from Appleton. Good morning to you, Cindy. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Good morning, girl. Good morning, Sandy. Well, first of all, the guy that talked about Hegstaff being so qualified, he also left off the part on the resume where Hegstaff said that women are basically a burden on the military. And just because somebody went to Princeton or Harvard or whatever does not make them qualified to run. I mean, this is what is it, $885 billion budget? Come on, this just isn't run by just anybody. So I don't know. I think we're headed down a really bad path here. And the worst part about this is I think the military is going to eventually be used against we the people.
Hey, Cindy, thank you very much for the call. 855-752-4842 is Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my call. Sandy Williams and you. Hang on, guys. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show.
Raise our food just like the man. Save our money, do like the mob. Put up your factory and own the job. We got to get over before we go under. Time in the joint. Oh, Lord. Country, do you know just what I meant? We just changed. We got a brand new funky president.
What's the topic? Talking about meritocracy.
We've taken all you give. It's getting hard to make a living. Mr. President, if pity on a working man. We ain't asking.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. Let's go right back to the phone lines. And Charles, thank you very much for waiting. You say what, sir?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. And so my question is, if the right has come up with what they want people to believe DEI stands for, so if we went on their definition of DEI, wouldn't Pete Hegseth be a DEI hire, somebody that's unqualified for a position that he was given?
Well, I mean, I forgot who it was. I think it was Cassandra who kind of echoed those sentiments, and I would say without question that he clearly would fall into that category based on what that definition of it is.
Okay. I was just wondering because I hear people talk about it, and I'm like, this guy is nowhere near qualified, but he was given, I mean, we know why he was given that position, but yeah, he's nowhere near qualified to run that agency.
Hey, Charles, thank you very much, as always, for the call. Let's go to Rob from Appleton. Good morning to you, Rob. You say what?
Hey, Earl. Good morning. Enjoying the show here.
Thank you.
You know, I once heard somebody joke there's nothing more amusing than a freshman that's just gone to his first political science class and wants to tell everybody how the world works as if they never heard it before. I see a lot of that in this whole debate about wokeness and DEI. You know, the civil rights movement started back in the 60s, and I'm an older guy. I've worked with black, Asian, male, female, Indian. It's never been a problem. So why is it suddenly this huge thing as if nobody ever thought about it or considered it before? I've been working, playing, and living next to people of all colors and races for years, and it's never been an issue, and not for anybody I know. So the question is, why is it being ginned up as such a big deal? And why are all these next tier programs being created that really aren't necessary? We've already got laws against discrimination. We already have laws that require equal opportunity, as it should be. So what's really behind that?
Well, so
Hang on.
I'm just to understand what the caller is saying. You're saying what's behind having DEI programs, or what's behind the vilification of the DEI programs?
I go back to my initial comment, which is kind of tongue in cheek. Is, people, I'm woke. Well, welcome to the world. My generation 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago did away with discrimination. All people are equal, color, race, it doesn't matter. If it's something new that has just happened, and that's the head scratcher for me, is why is it being presented that way? Because it's clearly not. As I said, I've been working, playing, and living next to people of all races and colors.
Well, do you really think that the United States is now post-racial? I know that when Obama was elected, there was a lot of exultation, people saying, well, that we're in post-racial America now, where race doesn't make a difference. But do you really think that race has been erased from people's thought process when they're making decisions in the workplace and elsewhere?
Well, Sandy,
No,
I'll let
I'm
him
asking the
answer.
caller
I
because
know, but I'll let the caller answer. But when you're talking about this, and there are black people who are hearing this, we know that that's not the case. Okay, even with affirmative action and all of those things, race has never been erased from the lexicon of this nation.
well,
Rob, go ahead and respond.
Well, first of all, I disagree with your question premise. It's not an either or. It's a sliding scale. It's a matter of progression and getting better and better. And if you think race has ever been erased anywhere in the world, you're fooling yourself.
no, of course, that's my point, sort of. Yeah.
Where we're at today versus where we're at in this country when I was 15 years old is night and day. I mean,
I agree with that.
People, it makes like it's a horrible, horrible problem that's never been addressed. B is in B, S is in S. Racial relations have never been better in this country. People my age have never had more friends and relationships and family members of different types than ever. So why is it being painted as worse? That's my question. And the reason is somebody's trying to make political hay out of it. It'll never be perfect, Earl. You're right. It'll never be perfect, my man, because people are imperfect. And nowhere on the planet is racist.
Well, do you think? I mean, the DEI process hardly was political hay. I mean, if anything, it's been there's been a backlash, and it's been a negative. And if anything, the concept of woke and DEI was used very probably effectively against the Democrats in the last election. So my sense is that it wasn't a popular movement, and my sense is that DEI got its start in corporate America, not in government America.
Corporations always have the CYA. I've been part of that before, no question. But like I say, on a feet in the ground basis, I've never known a world with more equality and more where people of all different types could live together in this country than they have now. So why is it being portrayed as worse than ever when that's really not the truth?
Hey, Rob.
Well, actually, you'll go just a minute on that though, because just in terms of data, if you look at unemployment in the state of Wisconsin, we have a record low unemployment rate, and yet the unemployment rate amongst African Americans is at a very high level. So, I mean, this equity that you talk about is anecdotal, and I think we're all experiencing improvements in it. But if you look at things on a macro basis and just analyze data, I'm not sure how much better it really is.
All right, let's go to Lori from Shawano. Hey, good morning to you, Lori. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
I want to comment on that whole thing with the Obama and the racism. So I was told by somebody who is on the other side that this was days after President Obama had been elected, that somebody they were listening to said that there is no more racism in America because we elected our first black president.
Yes.
But they failed to say that he's also half white because they don't want to even consider that he could possibly be related to them. But so that means that no white male can ever claim racism or sexism because every president up to Obama and since Obama has been a white male. So there's that. If those are the parameters that they're setting, then they can't come back and say, oh, well, now white males are being disadvantaged. The other thing, you're talking about meritocracy. The lady mentioned capitocracy, and I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Idiocracy, where it was like
Yes.
anything that makes sense is the opposite, which is what we've got now. So the epitome of that kind of is like this guy, this insurrectionist who was released. I don't know how many years he was supposed to do.
22.
But he gets out.
And goes to the Capitol.
Wow. And he could have been alive for 22 years. Instead, he gets out and gets the death penalty. Now, that seems like idiocracy to me. It just...
Hey, Laurie, thank you very much for the call. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Eric from Tulsa, you're up next, sir. Go ahead.
Hello, Earl. Hello, Sandy. Quite the conversation today. I got to say that imagining a whitey-tighty righty from Stoughton walking the same Milwaukee streets where young black guys hang out is patently hilarious. I think you ought to invite all your audience members to Juneteenth, and we'll see who shows up and who's comfy walking around Milwaukee. Anyways, let's not forget also our current defense secretary is actually a DUI hire, and that the people who fired this guy, the alcoholic sexual abuser, recently from his positions of responsibility, are all dyed-in-the-wool GOPers. So there was no liberal, thing behind any of that. Those are all Republicans firing that guy. And also the idea of meritocracy, let's forget, is based on right now first putting, white Christian males in charge of everything. And to think that they understand, that folks like this that understand meritocracy that way, putting people in charge and running by that is hilarious, is terrifying, I should say. But finally, I like to say, let's not forget that DEI, notice they never say diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's just DEI, has only replaced woke to fund the police, critical race theory, or CRT, as again, they only say it, and they're eating the dogs as racist dog whistles for black and brown people who are taking over the country, because 2043 threatens our white supremacist doctrine and our white dominance. And to the person who said that things are getting better for folks, I'd like to say clearly, I believe that the wait, as they say, the wait, is only another way of saying, give us just one more day on top, please. And racism has evolved as well in order to maintain the socioeconomic status quo, no matter what norms exist currently. And statistically, I'd like to say, before I'm done here, is that the black wealth gap and the black ownership gap is actually greater than it was decades ago. So
No
people
question.
that are trying to say that things are getting better are only seeing it from their white suburban perspective, I'll say.
Hey, Eric, thank you very much for the call. Cassandra.
Yeah, hi, Earl. Thanks for taking my call again. I just wanted to make another point based upon some of the comments from another caller, especially the one who discussed Hegseth's credentials of graduating from these Ivy League colleges. In the military, that does not matter. I don't know if both you and Sandy recalled under the Obama administration, David Petraeus, he was a retired general and the director of the CIA, and he had an affair.
Yes.
And what was truly problematic for General Petraeus was that there had to be a very in-depth investigation to rule out that the affair did not occur while he was still serving in the military. Because if he had an extramarital affair as a general on active duty in the military, he was subject to criminal prosecution under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so the military codes and civilian codes on adultery are very, very different. And so as a veteran, I am appalled to have Pete Hegseth as as the Secretary of the Department of Defense, because it undermines morale, and I don't approve of it.
Well, Sandra, he's supposedly there to clean it up. You know, when you hear what Donald Trump and congressmen and senators are saying, that's what he's there for, to clean up the military.
There were more qualified people than Pete Hegseth. And as I said before, I lean conservative, and even I am willing to say this person is not qualified to sit in that office.
Thank you very much for the call. Sandy, you want to respond to any of that?
Well, I was going to actually respond to the caller several callers ago from Appleton who wanted to talk about whether DEI was needed or not, that things were so much better. And I think what I would only remind him of is that things got better as the result of a lot of affirmative action and a lot of affirmative attention. And that things, yes, I think are better. I'm glad that he in particular is matriculating with and has found himself in a much more diverse world. That's good. But he needs to look, that the mirror image of that is, what is the experience of the people who are of color or are diverse, and what is their experience, and is what they are experiencing, is it much better? Because he's got the experience of anecdote, and there sound like it's good experience, but it might be quite limited.
Well, you know, Sandy, I don't have a PhD in many things, but I have a PhD in being a black man in America and understanding where we are. 855-752-4842 is the number. Hang on, guys. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams on the Earl Ingram Show.
Too late to cry now. Time has come for us to say goodbye now.
On the next show, we'll talk with Flack and the campaign of lead-free water before discussing how the biggest stories in the national politics affect us in Wisconsin with Dr. Craig from Citizen Action. Let me do it again. On the next show, we'll talk with Flack and the campaign for lead-free water before discussing how the biggest stories in national politics affect us in Wisconsin with Dr. Craig from Citizen Action.
Were you ever taught when you were young? If you mess with things selfishly, they're bound to come undone. I'm not the only one that's been affected and resented every story you've spun, and I'm a lucky one. 'Cause there are people worse off that have suffered enough. Haven't they suffered enough? But you can't get enough of Shutting down systems for personal gain, fighting fires with liars and praying for rain. Do you get off on pain? We're not
All right,
pawns in
welcome
the
back
game.
to the last few minutes of the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. Sandy, before we go to the phone line, just want to say, man, great discussion, great topic. Callers, right? This is a conversation that needs to be being had across this nation right now, and the depth of it, because of the impact of what it's going to happen because of these decisions that are being made. Let's go to Jack from Merrimack. Good morning to you, Jack. Thank you very much for the call.
Good morning. Yeah, first of all, I got three things to say if I can remember them all. First of all, Hexeth, by any reasonable measure, is absolutely unqualified to be where he's at. If he were in the military, he would be drummed out. And here's how I know. I have a very, very dear friend, a woman with whom I have climbed mountains, and she was a pilot, and she was responsible in the first Trump administration. She was one of those responsible for his air security, so you know she was very, very good. She had an affair once. She was drummed out of her military service. They just basically threw her away. The next thing is that I have progressive friends and even a couple of conservative friends who, when Trump was elected and some were voting for him, they said, "Oh, he's not going to do all of that Project 2025 stuff." Well, I sincerely hope that this is an eye-opener for those people. I'm sure that some of the police that voted for this guy all of a sudden are getting some buyer's remorse.
Some of the Latinos.
Oh, I'm sure.
As well.
I'm sure that's the case. That's the case too. Something like a third of Latino families in this country, I think, have one undocumented relative in the country. And anyway, finally, we are about to see what the transition into, I think, fascism is like. Maybe not quite a dictatorship, but it's going to be very close. And what we have now is, I think it was Mark Twain that called this the best government that money can buy. We have government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. And people are, again, about to find that out, too. Some of those who said, yeah, this is not going to happen. It's going to happen, unfortunately.
Hey, Jack, thank you.
In
I wish I had more time. Thank you very much for the call. Bill from Oconomowoc. Bill, go ahead.
It was on the anniversary, it was yesterday or today, of the Holocaust. At the Holocaust Museum, I believe, it says, "We shall never forget." We forgot, because now they're rounding up, as they call them, illegals, and they believe they're hurting our society, much like the German administration thought that Jews were hurting their society. They were rounded up, and first they started with ghettos, and then it led from Jewish ghettos to other places. Well, heaven help us. We are now, in 1 week, the most insecure we've ever been nationally for national security by the destruction of our allies. All your listeners, Gary and CJ, I don't know how they can even not comprehend.
Hey, Bill, thank you very much for the call. Sandy, great calls, great conversation. You say what?
Well, I do believe that the disruption in the military is going to be substantial as well. You can't fire a bunch of generals. You can't shake. People have talked about people who support Hegseth have said, well, he's a great disruptor, and that's what the Pentagon needs. Well, the disruption of our military will, in fact, disrupt our military, and we'll see what that means in terms of capability, but and use, and how our military gets deployed in the future, and hopefully it's always only abroad. I think we just all have to be vigilant about what's going on, because vigilance is required, and we're gonna be tested. Our courts are going to be tested. Our system is going to be tested. and so will all of us.
You know, Sandy, you and I talked about having this conversation early this morning. We had a whole list of other things to get to, but we didn't get to any of them because clearly people know that something is changing, right? Quickly.
Yeah.
And they have thoughts on it.
Well, and like I said, Project 2025, people, Donald Trump held his nose and pretended he had nothing to do with it because he knew that much within it is very incendiary, and now its implementation is going to be be incendiary, and it's going to be something that we all need to worry about a bit, and it's going to test our courts, it's going to test our system.
Hey, Sandy, thank you for a great conversation as always. Thank everybody who made the show go. We couldn't do it without you, the listeners. Tell somebody about us so we can continue doing what we're doing, but let somebody else know about the show. And Calvin, thank you. Up next, Matt Nair, Jane Matt Nair, and Greg Bach, Matt Nair on air. See you guys on tomorrow.
Won't give up.